Welcome into the recruiting rundown here on Gamecock Central, everybody. Kendall Smith and Wes Mitchell joining you here. And Wes, we're twinning here today.
Hoodie day.
Same vibe going, little game day eve hoodie action happening here on the recruiting rundown.
It's chilly out there, Kendall.
Episode of the week. Yeah, it is a little too chilly for my liking at this point. I know it's cold in Columbia. It's cold here in Charlotte today, but it's okay because it's game day eve. We are so excited for tomorrow's game between South Carolina and Wofford at 4:15. And it's a big recruiting weekend for the Gamecocks. Maybe not as big as an LSU weekend would be, or Missouri or Texas A&M, but you still got a lot of guys that are coming out that South Carolina is trying to impress. It's their last chance to do it this season, playing at home at Williams-Brice Stadium. So, Wes, when you look at this weekend as a whole, how big is it and how important is it for South Carolina to really impress these recruits, as it's the last chance they're going to have this season?
Yeah, another sellout for South Carolina. Every single home game has been sold out this year. So definitely that's an accomplishment for these fans. And I think, Kendall, you got to take advantage of every opportunity you have to have fans in Willie B and then have recruits come watch your team. And obviously, like you said, is it an SEC opponent? No, but it is one final opportunity for prospects who are making those decisions leading into National Signing Day to get a look at your program, to see what you're all about, to watch the team one last time. And of course, like we've talked about probably in every single recruiting rundown, you are laying the foundation with these 2026 prospects, 2027s, even some 2028s. These are the names that might be on this list that maybe fans don't even recognize at this point, but a year from now, 2 years from now, a lot of them are the same prospects we're going to be talking about as maybe being major targets down the road. So I think that is an underlooked part of this right now that is very valuable. But certainly for this weekend, for the here, for the now, it's all about having these 3 official visitors on campus, 2 of which are targets and 1 of which is already committed to South Carolina.
Yeah, you mentioned it there. 1 of them committed to South Carolina. 2 of them are prospects that South Carolina is really trying to impress this weekend. So, Wes, let's get some names. Who are the guys that are coming out on official visits this weekend to Columbia?
Well, I'll start with Quay Dodd. He's a 4-star edge, already committed to South Carolina. So he took an unofficial visit in the summer, which is when he committed to the Gamecocks. And so he never actually used his OV. This would just be his opportunity to come in, bring his family in, get a complete look at the program. For the guys that are already committed, a lot of times it's more about you can kind of get a head start on maybe meeting some academic advisors, getting an idea of exactly what it looks like when you're on campus, when you're a part of the program. So this will be really just a fun weekend for him, his family, and a chance to go ahead and get ready for enrollment. I need to confirm if he's an early enrollee. Most of the guys these days just go ahead and enroll in January. So it's a good sort of jump on getting ready for that. But the other 2 guys are pure just targets for South Carolina, not committed to the Gamecocks. Christian Ingram is a 3-star defensive lineman who South Carolina has kind of targeted down the stretch. He is looking at a number of programs right now that South Carolina is trying to kind of fight off. He's visited Michigan officially. He's visited Kentucky officially. Right now, it looks like he's going to visit Vandy officially next week. So this is kind of a little bit later in the process recruitment than we're used to seeing, and that there's still 4 or 5 schools involved here that are trying to land his signature. I believe, just based on some of what I've heard, what I've read online too, Kentucky is probably the favorite right now. Like I said, he's already been there, but this is not a prospect that has had just a ton of exposure to the South Carolina program to this point. So even though it's later in the process, a real opportunity for South Carolina to make a move this weekend. But obviously, that's all going to be dictated by just how this weekend goes. So I think it's kind of wait and see. Let's see what happens. Let's see what the feedback is. But an opportunity for South Carolina. The other kid, Stephen Miller, he is a Southern Cal commitment, 3-star defensive back. He is from Georgia. Little bit more exposure here in terms of his familiarity with South Carolina. He also has a teammate, Kevin Wynn, who's a 4-star defensive lineman committed to Florida State. That is a major, major priority for South Carolina. They're trying to flip him. So this will be, Wynn took his official in the summer. This will be Stephen Miller's opportunity to take his official to South Carolina. A lot of people are sort of under the impression he maybe is not going to end up all the way out there at Southern Cal, like just from Georgia all the way to California. Obviously, that's a big step. Still committed there for now. South Carolina trying to flip flip him. Mississippi State is also trying to flip him. That's a school he was actually very involved with and committed to earlier in the process as well. So for South Carolina, an opportunity with a couple of these guys to make a big move. I would say you frame it up like this. I think it's a little bit further along with Stephen Miller in terms of just he already has some just knowledge of the program. I think with Ingram, it's going to be all about just what he sees, how he reacts, a lot of things he will learn this weekend. He may be learning about South Carolina for the first time.
Wes, I'm curious with these official visits because you obviously talk to these guys, a lot of them at least, after they come to South Carolina, after they take the visit. Of course, the atmosphere stands out to them a ton and their relationships that they create with the coaches. But what else about these visits can really make South Carolina stand out to these guys?
It's a little bit cliche, Kendall, but a lot of times they do talk about the family feel, kind of the family environment, how everybody has a sense of just, almost kind of just goofing off with each other in terms of like that, just knowing when to be serious, but knowing that, hey, this is supposed to be fun. Like if you're going to spend this much time and this much effort and this much just sort of the business side of it with these guys, you got to have some fun as well. And I actually, within the time since we did our one earlier this week, I did end up catching up with Mike Tyler, the Hammond tight end, who we talked about had just completed his official visit when we recorded earlier this week. And that was one thing he talked about too. Like that's kind of fresh on my mind. He was just like, look, I was almost a little bit taken aback at just how tight knit everybody over there seems. And, you have that in a lot of football programs. It does get cliched a little bit. Everybody throws around culture. That's what every coach wants. But I do think there's a lot of evidence that Shane Beamer really has built a strong foundation, a strong culture in Columbia. And when prospects take these official visits and they sort of get just the complete picture, they really see that. And it's just very different than taking just an unofficial, because a lot of times you take an unofficial for a game, you're coming in, you're spending some time around the staff, around players. But let's be honest, they're getting ready for the game on Saturday. Like that's focus number one. If you're in for your official, especially kind of that Sunday when you're to get to spend a little bit more time around the staff all morning long into the afternoon, it really makes a difference. And so I think that's what you want if you're a head coach in the modern day with the transfer portal and NIL, the relationships, the culture, just the kind of those day-to-day elements of the people you're going to be around if you're going to choose a school, they do still matter.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just talked about unofficial visits there. South Carolina has a few of those this weekend. We obviously get a list and we will keep you up to date with that on GamecockCentral.com. We decided to do this recruiting rundown a little bit later in the week so we could give you a clearer picture of who might be coming out this weekend for South Carolina's game against Wofford. But we talk about 2026 guys, 2027, 2028 guys. I mean, gosh, we're going to be talking about 2030 before we know it. But a lot of guys coming out this weekend for unofficial visits. Are there any names on the list, Wes, that stand out to you at this point?
Yeah, and if you want to go on to Gamecock Central, we do already have what is pretty much a complete list. There's always maybe a last-minute addition or subtraction, but for the most part, that's the guys that are expected at South Carolina right now. And a couple of guys do stand out to me. And, we've seen Carolina. Let's start with offensive line, Kendall. We've seen Carolina do a fantastic job the last few recruiting cycles of getting young offensive linemen on campus early, and then that carrying over into them landing those guys, especially the in-state players. And you've got two of the best in 2026 O-line, Zion Giles and Desmond Green, both in-state 2026 offensive linemen with offers from South Carolina. They've been on campus a bunch of times already, but Carolina will get them back in this weekend as well. That's something to keep an eye on. Gordon Sellers from Providence Day, up where you are right now in Charlotte. That's a guy that I've heard really good things about. He's a wide receiver in that 2026 class. 3-star guy right now, but I think has a chance to move up in those rankings and is a guy to maybe keep an eye on for South Carolina moving forward. And let's go back here locally. Let's finish off with who I talked about a second ago, Mike Tyler. He told me earlier this week that he was either going to go back to LSU, like for one last opportunity to see LSU, or he might just make the short trip back over to South Carolina. He is not currently on our list at South Carolina that we put out, but that's something I've been kind of keeping an eye on. They have a playoff game this weekend as well for his Hammond school team. So based on what we're hearing, it is not looking like he's going to end up going all the way out to LSU this weekend. So pretty decent chance that he may pop up. Hammond to Williams-Brice, and obviously I don't know where Mike lives, but no matter where you are in Columbia, it's a pretty easy trip over there. So I would keep an eye on Mike Tyler possibly being back at South Carolina this weekend. And the Gamecocks really are trending at a good spot there to flip him from LSU.
Well, I know that you all are probably sad because you're thinking, wow, this is the last recruiting rundown that we're going to get because South Carolina is playing their last game at home this weekend. But don't worry, everybody. We are here to let you know the recruiting rundown will continue. We will be back early next week with another episode to give you the rundown on everything you need to know about the Wofford game. And then we will continue with the recruiting rundown because recruiting never really stops, even when it's not the season, even when South Carolina is not playing at home. There is still a lot going on in the world of recruiting. So don't you worry, everybody, because National Signing Day, as we call it now, it's the early signing period, but really most guys sign in December. That is coming up here soon. So we will have plenty more coming your way, but we're excited for this weekend. South Carolina taking on Wofford. It's senior day, so shout out to all of the seniors, guys that we were talking about a few years ago, and now all of a sudden they're seniors. So actually not we, because I wasn't here when they were in the high school recruiting process, but Wes and Chris were talking about them a few years ago. So anyways, we're excited about this weekend. We appreciate you joining us here on the Recruiting Rundown. And as always, visit GamecockCentral.com. Follow us on social media at Gamecock Central, and we will have everything you need to know about the South Carolina Gamecocks on those platforms. So thanks for joining us here today, everybody. We hope you have a great rest of your day. For Wes Mitchell, I'm Kendall Smith. This has been another episode of the Recruiting Rundown, and we will see you soon.